The scene is unique as an athletic venue. A team of dogs, a sled, a driver. 500 long and grueling miles that showcase the beauty of northern Minnesota. But beyond the rolling trails and branches bending in the wind, this march takes them on a quest through a ferocious winter, amid the perils of the trail. And with the pressures of a constantly ticking watch, it is only time that matters. And yet, despite the obstacles, there is a bond, a special chemistry, shared by those rugged few who come back each year to experience a world that few will ever know. ESPN presents the 1993 Grand Portage Chippewa John Beargrease Sled Dog Marathon from Duluth, Minnesota. Hello again, everybody. I'm Peter Graves from Duluth. We're delighted to be with you today. For the next 80 hours or so, competitors are going to be going about 500 miles up the north shore of Lake Superior in what is going to be an unbelievable athletic competition. The word race is a bit of a misnomer because for the next 80 hours, there is a special bond between man and dog on a 500-mile course. A man who will work with us today, and he knows all the angles of this sport, our expert commentator and a former competitor himself, Mark Nordman. And Mark, a lot of people are calling this a dream race this year. It is a great field.
It really is, Peter. What we've got this year is 4 top competitors in Jamie Nelson, Terry Atkins, Doug Swinley, and Robin Jacobson. As in any sport, I think the defending champion is always the one to beat, and he's back again this year, and that's Greg Swinley. We're looking for one heck of a race this year. I know the crowd is primed for it. Weather looks good, and I expect a very fast trail.
It is going to be cold, and there are a lot of elements to be reckoned with. Always in a race like this, you've got to expect the unexpected out there.
Yeah, very much so. Along the north shore of Lake Superior here, we do have the problem with the sudden snowfalls, the drops and rises in temperature. The trail right now is very fast, and we're looking for a record time again this year.
All right, it should be great. The best drivers in North America, and in fact, the world, are with us. And we'll be back with the start of competition in just a moment. The Beargrease Sled Dog Marathon is brought to you by Budweiser, the king of beers, who reminds you friends know when to say when. We're just moments before the start of competition in the John Beargrease Marathon, and the dogs, just like any athlete, are primed and ready to go for the test that's about at hand. Tell me how these dogs are feeling. They're just like an athlete ready to get out of the starting gate.
They're like springs ready to explode.
What are you trying to do? Are you trying to keep them calm at all?
Try to hold them down a little bit so they don't use too much energy.
This race is tough on both driver and dog. A person who has much insight into dog care is the head veterinarian of this race, Dr. Gerald Abelson.
There is some concern among some people that this is a relatively inhumane situation, but I don't think so. As you can hear around you, these dogs are anxious to go. When you see them at the start, they'll be bounding the same way, and they're just looking forward to it. They also are total athletes. They can come back and so-called rejuvenate pretty quickly.
Part of Jerry's job is to make sure all the dogs are in good health and ready to compete. Seems like the dog's pretty peaceful right now and calm.
Yeah, they really are. They're used to a lot of people around them, and like I said, they're really used to being handled a lot. For a veterinarian, these dogs are probably easier to work with than most that we see in our office. We primarily are going to check their heart, make sure that we don't hear any murmurs. We want to check their hydration, the color of their mucous membranes. We want to be sure that we have total flexibility in joints and that we don't elicit any pain with some minor manipulation. And he lets us do all that pretty easy. We'll again look at his feet back here, and they look really pretty good. So this dog has been marked with a mark particular for this team, and he's ready to race.
Well, after much anticipation, the start of the race is upon us. The start of the John Beargrease Sled Dog Marathon. A big crowd at Ordine Stadium in Duluth witnesses Al Fleury of Gilbert, Minnesota. And Mark, he's done this race before.
This is his second attempt at the race, and his goal is just to complete it this year.
This is also very historic because it marks the first time that this race has started during the daylight hours.
What we're all noticing is just that the people involved with the race, the dogs and the drivers, are so much more at ease.
Absolutely. As Al Fleury leaves the Ordine Stadium, the dogs look great. The crowd's very appreciative. 500 miles lie before them, and it's a very tough course, Mark.
It really is. The trail starts in Duluth and heads up through the hills of Sawbill Trail with the turnaround at Grand Portage, dropping into Tofte and the burial place of John Beargrease Beaver Bay before heading back towards Duluth.
A lot of people are talking about this being the toughest sled dog race in the lower 48, and it goes through some magnificent country. Greg Swingley, last year's winner, the defending champion in this event, and all week long everybody's been talking about him.
Yes, he is definitely the fellow to beat in this year's race. He and his brother have a top-notch kennel. They train in Idaho, they train at altitude, and they're the ones to watch.
It is a team, and it's really, there's a bond out there created just by the emotions of the driver. There's a lot of ups and downs, and the more experience you get, the less downs you have, and those downs really affect the dogs a lot. Once you get out there on the trail, you can only do with what you have, how you've trained. You just take it as it comes, and that's all you can do.
A young man, but tough as nails and with nerves of steel, incredibly disciplined and focused. And we talked to him earlier this week, and the media as well as the fans sense that Greg is the man to beat here.
I think what you have to do, Peter, is always look at the driver and dogs as a whole. You look at his dogs, and they are like little soldiers at the starting line.
And so to big applause, Greg Swingley from Montana is leaving Ordine Stadium area. It's a beautiful sunny day. Temperatures are very brisk. And Ed Dallas is our next musher to start. He is out of Deerwood, Minnesota.
Every event has a character, Peter, and Ed is definitely our character in this race.
We have fun at it. We have real fun at it. And everybody pulling for me to finish one of these years. And I can tell you right now, if I finish, there'll be more people at Lester Park for me than whoever wins this race.
Ed's really excited about this year's race, and all his local support hope to see him finish this year.
And they give him a boisterous send-off here in Duluth. Ed Dallas, maybe this will be his year. Out on the course now, we see Eric Simula, and one of his handlers is up on the sled with him. Mark, what's that all about?
It's for control. The dogs have so much energy this early in the race.
And they look terrific. Eric Simula in the very early stages of this race. Back in Ordine Stadium, George Schneider from the Lacrosse Footwear Company, a longtime supporter of this event, waves the flag, and Ian McKenzie out of Bruce Mines, Ontario, pushes out of the start.
A veteran of many distance races, Ian is one of 3 Canadians this year we have.
And it's good to have them. Another veteran is the former champion of this event, Terry Adkins, 50 years old, from Sand Coulee, Montana. He's been mushing for 20 years, and another favorite in the race.
A 13-time Iditarod finisher, Terry Atkins is one of the most determined drivers we have in our sport. He's run every major long-distance race and always been competitive in all of them.
And this year he runs in his 8th Beargrease event here in Minnesota. Already into the 10-mile marker of this race to the prime time checkpoint. And what's the course like, Mark?
The course is the most confusing part for the dogs. There's many road crossings and thousands of people line the course. It's also the most difficult to control the animals because this is when they're at their maximum energy.
Already at the first checkpoint at prime time is 37-year-old Greg Swingley, and he has passed 3 other mushers who started before him, and he looks absolutely tremendous. And the dogs are working so well together and running with a sense of purpose in the early going of this race. Back in Ordine Stadium in Duluth is Robin Jacobson, 29 years old, of Squaw Lake, Minnesota.
Robin is the 1986 champion of the Beargrease. He's also had 2 top 10 Iditarod finishes. He is one of our true professionals.
So Robin Jacobson leaves Ordine Stadium right now, and next up we'll be taking a look at Doug Swingley. He is 40 years old, of Sims, Montana, and is the older brother of Greg, who is doing so well in this race.
Doug is a rookie in this year's race, although not a rookie to the race itself. He was instrumental in the win last year that Greg performed.
This is the most relaxing sport. People think it's real arduous and intensive. It is, but it's the most relaxing mentally because you're just out there. You got nothing to worry about but about 60 feet in front of you. and your dogs, and there's no telephones. You know, the banker's not calling. Nobody's having any problems, so it's just relaxing, and that's the greatest part of it.
And you have to look at the awesome set of credentials of Doug Swingley, Rookie of the Year in last year's Iditarod. That indeed establishes him as another top-ranked musher here.
I think the Swinley brothers are looking for a 1-2 finish this year.
And they certainly could do it. Out on the course now, we see the veteran musher, Ray Gordon, out of Rock Springs, Wyoming, skating along.
Ray's been involved with the sport for many years. He's a true story in itself. He overcame cancer about 2 years ago, and we're glad to have him back with us again this year.
Our next musher to leave is going to be Curtis Gagnon here at Ordine Stadium. He's 43 years old and out of Grand Portage, and he's been mushing for about 15 years and another crowd favorite.
Curtis is a local favorite and is well known for his excellent dog play.
He's a forestry technician for the Bureau of Indian Affairs and also a commercial fisherman, and he's underway. And talk about pressure for Curtis right now. This is Jamie Nilsson, 44 from Togo, Minnesota, 20 years mushing experience and a former champion.
Jamie is a very strong-willed and determined person. She's well known for her dog training abilities as well as racing.
Jamie won the 1988 Beargrease event and finished second in 1989, so certainly one of the favorites here. Very focused, ready to go, and you can see the cold breath here in Duluth. Nightfall not far away. Out on the course right now is Clay Rumpf. He's a Wisconsin musher and adjusting his headlamp, getting ready for the rigors of the darkness.
This is the first night of the race, Peter, and it's always the toughest for the dogs and driver. You want to make sure all your equipment's in perfect condition before we get into nightfall.
A cold and lonely night. Minnesota gets ready for darkness. We'll be back. Welcome back. 2.5 hours into this race right now. It's dusk over the Minnesota North Country, and the mushers trying to squeeze every last ounce of sunlight out of the day. This race engenders hundreds of stories each year, but this year the talk of the trail was Ed Dallas, who recalls losing his dog team deep in the forest on a snowy Christmas Eve night.
Well, I started doing some mighty heavy talking to the guy upstairs, and I said, hey, God, you can create a whole universe with no problem. You could set that snow hook in the ground. And I no sooner said those words, and around the bend comes this old beat-up pickup full of firewood. These two old guys had been out cutting firewood, and they got a trailer on full of firewood. And the dirty, oiliest guys you'd ever seen, no teeth, chewing on the dirtiest sandwich you've ever seen, and flagged them down, and I said, hey, you guys seen a dog team? And the guy goes, oh yeah, says they're just around the bend, said that hook you got is just dug in the road, said they're standing there as pretty as you please. And well, I figured it was just like the good news of the shepherds, that angels come down and they said, hey, get yourselves down to Bethlehem, there's some good news. And I had the greatest news myself was, hey, there's a dog team around the bend. And I know how they felt, here I go trucking around the bend, and turns out to be about 1.25 miles or so, but there's a dog team. The good news was there's a dog team, so I know how those shepherds felt. It was like a miracle. It was my greatest Christmas present ever.
And for Ed Dallas, perhaps some of that Christmas magic will work in this year's race. Out on the trail now is Spencer Thew as nightfall is coming. And Mark, nightfall provides us with dramatic moments. But you've said the dogs prefer to run in the dark.
They really do. They like running in the dark. They're not so confused by what's going on around them. They're just focusing on the trail. This is Spencer's first night on the race, and it will be one of his most exciting.
Already leaving his rivals behind, Greg Swingley clears the Highway 2 checkpoint.
Greg's on record pace at this time. The trail between Highway 2 and Finland is mostly run on an old railroad grade with a series of hills just prior to the Finland checkpoint.
The night is as black as coal. The woods as deep and lonely as they were 200 years ago. In The Spell of the Yukon, Robert Service wrote beautifully about the lure of the trail. The snows that are older than history, the woods where the weird shadows slant, the stillness, the moonlight, the mystery. I'd bade 'em goodbye, but I can't. Inspired perhaps by the words of Service, Greg Swingley comes into the Finland checkpoint. At this point, bone-weary and tired, he will stay here 3 hours. And Mark, it's at this time where the dogs get both food and rest.
Yes, it is. This is the first real rest that these dogs have had. They'll get a full meal and a good pat on the head and be sent on their way after the 3-hour break.
And much like athletes, the hydration process is ongoing.
The trail between Finland and Sawbill is very typical of the whole trail itself. It's rolling hills. It's actually leading up to the toughest part of the trail, the Sawbill Hills.
Dawn's first light in the Minnesota North Country. A new day has begun. And one man pushes on at a blistering pace. Greg Swingley is still in the lead and has made a memory of this Sawbill stop, pausing for only 9 short minutes. The snow is falling now, but Swingley and his dogs have a sense of purpose, a sense of unity. And out on the course, Andre Nadeau from Quebec is having a fine ride, Mark.
He really is. Although it doesn't surprise a lot of true race followers, he's known for setting the pace early.
37 years old from St. Melanie, Quebec, Canada. Competing in his second Beargrease, Nadeau, who speaks only French, signs the logbook. Now, the next dramatic part of the course, Sawbill to Devil's Track.
The hills of Sawbill are well known throughout the mushing world. They only lead to the flat 7-mile Devil's Track Lake, which is the time that the dogs like to pick up.
Now the disciplined Greg Swingley on a solo pursuit at Devil's Track Lake. He has an enormous lead.
In any team, there is one main player, and in this case, it is Blue, Greg's leader. He has a tremendous enthusiasm for racing, as you can tell by his gait.
Although Greg Swingley is leading this race by 3 hours, there is another battle brewing for second and third. Running in second is Robin Jacobson. Less than 3 minutes behind him is the veteran Dennis Laboda.
Dennis Laboda is having a great race here, Peter. He's a top mid-distance musher, and he's doing very well at his second attempt at the marathon.
Coming in now to the Skyport checkpoint, Greg Swingley with a commanding lead of over 3 hours. Could he be running a record time for this race? It helps to measure your opponents in sports, and from a distance, Laboda can see his opponent. Dead ahead, Robin Jacobson, and that is the battle for second and third. Into the checkpoint, Greg Swingley takes time to feed and water the dogs. The team has been working well together. My colleague Mark Nordman has been raising dogs for 17 years. Now at his home, North Shore, we take an inside look at the raising of sled dogs.
The dogs we race are Alaskan Huskies. They're revered for their enthusiasm to run. We feed them high-powered foods consisting of meat mixes and commercial dry rations. The main thing to look forward in a sled dog is the enthusiasm and the heart to run these long races. These dogs are really a big part of our family here. They're raised from puppies. We're handling them all the time. We want real friendly dogs. We don't want shy dogs. We want friendly dogs because we do have to deal with them all the time. The way the dog acts, whether on a training run or a race, is all dependent upon the way the musher is that day. They really pick up on how you feel. Your dogs are very, very trusting, and you never want to break that bond of trust.
Now at the Skypoint checkpoint, Robin Jacobson arrives 22 hours into his race. The leader, Greg Swingley, coming into Skyport with a good lead. But does he perceive the performance of Laboda and Jacobson as a threat?
Well, there's still 300 miles left, and you just have to take good care of the dogs, and that's the only thing you can concern yourself with. You can't think about what might happen.
Coming in now and running in third place is Dennis Laboda into the Skyport checkpoint. He's considered an outstanding middle-distance musher, and he shared with us his strategy for the race.
I really didn't come in here to win it, you know, try to get out in front and lead the whole thing, that's for sure. It's just a matter of stay behind these guys that have done it a number of times and see what they do. That's what I'm up to.
The dogs of 29-year-old Robin Jacobson. He's been mushing for 7 years. But in this race, the Beargrease 500, he has never placed less than 6th. Now he is running in 2nd. The 1993 edition of the John Beargrease Sled Dog Marathon takes on an international flair. This year with Norwegian musher Sven Engholm, a man who's been active in mushing for 16 years. Engholm has been the champion of the 1981 and 1991 Finnmarksloppet, one of Europe's longest races. Out on the trail now and running a remarkable race is Greg Swingley, and a chance for us to take a look at some unique technique. Because as a gifted athlete, he not only rides the sled, but oftentimes is off to the side running.
That's correct, Peter. What we see with Greg here is that he's pedaling and also running along with the dogs. He's a tremendous athlete himself, entering in many ultra marathons.
And right now, this field feels the steely, remarkable presence of Greg Swingley as he pushes on towards the midway point. Snow is falling. Night is coming in northern Minnesota. It is day number 2 of the John Beargrease. We'll be back. It's a little after 10 o'clock in the evening right now, 31 plus hours into this competition. The snow is falling, the temperatures are plummeting, the woods are cold and foreboding, much like they might have been 200 years ago. There's a bit of an ethereal quality about it all, something surreal and yet very real. And out on the course, the lead driver, Greg Swingley, is having a marvelous performance. He should be confident, Mark, but can he afford to be overconfident?
In a 500-mile dog race, you can never afford to be overconfident. I would say that he has a comfortable lead, though.
All right. We are at the midway point of this competition. There's a fatigue factor. They're hungry. The dogs are tired and are going to be rested right now. But let's talk about the emotional factor.
The emotional factor is directly related to the dogs. If the dogs are up, the driver is also.
And Mark, this portion of the trail has some unique characteristics.
Peter, it really does. It's a favorite part of the whole trail for most of the drivers within the race here. Much wildlife is seen, the trail's much narrower. It's not run on a groomed snowmobile track at this point, and everybody really enjoys heading into Portage.
And coming into the halfway point right now is Greg Swingley. His light shining through the darkness, indicating that he is the leader. He's running so well, Mark. The pace is remarkable.
What we see is his dogs are so alert. He's excited, the dogs are looking really good, and he's ready to push back towards Duluth after a rest here.
In the next couple of hours, what are you going to do?
Dogs are going to stay here probably 5 hours, and they'll get a nice meal, and hopefully they get a lot of good rest here, and that'll really make us fly going back home.
You too, Greg? Getting some food?
Yeah, food and another nap.
All right, we'll let you go. Good luck. Great job. The Indians called it Kitchianagaming, or Grand Portage, an important link in the fur trade between Montreal and Northwest Territories. Where the Great Lakes join with the inland waterways, the fur traders and merchants would barter with the Indians and trappers. In 1887, it was the son of a Chippewa chief, John Beargrease, who delivered the mail along the shore. John Beargrease was an impressive man, standing over 6 foot tall, with features as rugged as the wilderness he traversed. He and his dogs were known to be snowbound for days at a time, but would finally come through tired, hungry, and frostbitten. If this intrepid musher were with us today, resting his dogs at Grand Portage, what reaction would he have to the changes that have taken place since he last stopped here so long ago?
He'd be amazed at our education here in Grand Portage. The school has been here, built in the 1930s, remains here today, and some ups and some downs. The kids are being educated here, yet we're carrying on a lot of the things that John Beargrease believed in and the language he spoke back then. They learn their culture, the kids learn how to sing on a drum, they learn how to dance, and they learn their Indian language, their Ojibwe language, along with the normal type of things anybody would learn in a school.
We started out with the Grand Portage Lodge in 1975. We went into the tourist industry because we're in a tourist area and we needed long-term jobs for our people, jobs that are going to be stable and year-round employment. And from then we've gone to the casino, which was a tremendous boost to the economy and the number of jobs available. Along with that, those profits allowed to expand in other areas, specifically the logging business. Grand Portage is a timbered reservation. We are now manufacturing pallet stock and wood chips for sale throughout Minnesota and Canada.
This area behind me is a good example of the holistic stewardship approach taken by the Chippewa people here at Grand Portage. 5 years ago, the Tribal Council adopted a plan which integrates timber, recreation, fish, and wildlife resources. We believe that the land belongs to the people, a little to the dead, some to those living, and most to those not yet born.
Our goal is to maintain a balance which provides for profitable businesses and also maintains and protects the natural resources that we cherish here on the reservation. This all could not be possible without the help and hard work of all the band members at Grand Portage.
I think if John Beargrease were able to walk the Grand Portage Chippewa Reservation today, he would certainly be impressed, but not surprised. Strength, endurance, and the will to press on to the next destination with confidence and courage made John Beargrease a legend. These are valuable attributes to have, whether you're building a community or delivering the mail. Duluth is still more than 200 miles away, and the clock ticks on.
Pull the head this way. Pull them up to there.
It is hour number 40 of the John Beargrease Sled Dog Marathon here in northern Minnesota, and as you can tell, the conditions have changed here on the track. In the wee hours of this morning, the snow has begun to fall with a vengeance here, and that is very likely to change the tactics of the course as snow accumulates on the track. For more on that story and how the dogs will fare in coping with it, let's go to my colleague, Mark Nordman.
Thank you, Peter. The weather has become a key factor in this year's Beargrease. It may no longer be beneficial for Greg Swinley to have the lead at this time with the amount of trail breaking that he will have to do. Also required are going to be more frequent rest stops and feeding breaks.
Coming into Devil's Track Lake now, the course comes full circle. A touch of irony, perhaps, where first meets last. Greg Swinley, the leader, and Spencer Thew confront each other. Thew will not see Swinley until the finish line in Duluth. Out on the course and running in second place comes the hard-charging and determined Robin Jacobson. The new fallen snow from last night, which is still coming down, is slowing the pace.
We've had 10 inches of new fallen snow since the teams left Grand Portage. What we see is Robin Jacobson running a 14-dog string. He's working very hard. What you see for the dogs and Robin is it's like running in sand up these hills. His dogs are all booted, he's taking very good care of them, and he is trying to go after Greg.
Going after Greg indeed. The 29-year-old musher has a wealth of experience. He has raced in the Iditarod 3 times, placing 6th in 1990. And he still seems fresh. It's 10:04 a.m. and Greg Swinley, our leader, is into the Devil's Track checkpoint, maintaining his lead. And despite the elements, Robin Jacobson continues to run in second place. But he knows to win this race, he must close the gap, and he must do it soon. At Grand Portage, a special celebration. The Norwegian Sven Engholm makes a presentation to Billy Blackwell, a gift from Norway to the Grand Portage Chippewa people. The gift, a special Norwegian ceremonial knife, befitting the occasion. Punching down the deep snow now, Greg Swingley out of Skyport, and getting stronger as the weather worsens. The snow was heavier than anyone predicted. Now it's not only a battle against the clock that is the foe, but also the weather that must be endured. One man who knows the story now of disappointment is the former champion of this race, Terry Adkins. He's been forced to abandon the race.
These dogs are very trusting, and you never want to go ahead and run them beyond their limits. Terry's a very experienced dog musher. He has a lot more racing to come this year, and he would just as soon that they take a good break here and get ready for the next event.
And I'm down to a few dogs that, if it was a hard, icy trail, I could go all the way to the finish line with them, but I'm not going to ask them to pull this. My back hurts enough. I don't like to get off and run up the hills either.
Terry Adkins, graphic proof of the variable nature of this race. Now he seeks the warmth of a wayside cabin, but he'll race again. Robin Jacobson comes into Skyport, still running in second place, but now nearly 4 hours behind, and with some hard decisions to make about how far he can push to catch Greg Swingley.
Behind me is Lake Superior, the largest body of fresh water in the world. In the summertime, this lake welcomes vacationers from around the world. But tonight, here at the John Beargrease Sled Dog Marathon, its thunderous crashes are a reminder that there is much distance to go. Already at the 51-hour mark of this race, the trail has been laced with pain. Many of the mushers have already been forced to abandon this course. The snow, the rain, the elements taking its toll. Greg Swingley is on that trail and has a commanding lead. And we'll take a look at him as he comes into the Tofte checkpoint when we continue. We'll be back.
Welcome back to the Grand Portage Chippewa John Beargrease Sled Dog Marathon in Minnesota. Greg Swingley now, still with a commanding lead and getting stronger by the minute. Crossing the Sawbill Bridge on his way to Tofte.
This is the first of 2 major downhill runs for these dog teams. It's a 12-mile run right into Tofte. Greg's dogs have been there before, and they know where they're going.
It's 6:22 p.m., the Tofte checkpoint. Most are settling down in the area for dinner, but not this man, 37-year-old Greg Swingley, our leader.
Well, Greg, there was a small crowd here, but an enthusiastic one to cheer you on. And I think everybody senses that you're getting stronger and stronger as the race progresses. Do you feel that way?
Well, it's hard to judge, you know. The different trail conditions, the dog's speed varies greatly, so I think we probably only averaged 8 miles an hour coming in here, which was slower than I expected. It was a real tough trail. And I'll just have to compare it to the other teams and see exactly how strong we are, but we have a pretty good lead now, so I think we have it.
It would be easy for somebody to feel overconfident now with the lead you've built up. But in a sport like this, a small error can really take its toll, can't it?
Yeah, there are times when the dogs decide they've had enough and they'll lay down, but that's never happened to me.
But it does happen, and it just happened to Dennis Laboda, who lives just miles away.
It's been a very difficult task for Dennis going to Grand Portage and back towards Devil's Track. His home training trails cross the area 4 different times. The dogs aren't physically tired, they're mentally tired.
And Erie Glow, this is Jamie Nilsson, who has just moved up to 4th place with the dropping of Dennis Laboda. Nilsson is a former champion. And perhaps on this evening, Dennis Laboda's dogs just want to return home. Robin Jacobson leaving the Skyport checkpoint, still running in second place, but continuing to drop off the pace. There are, however, others watching him carefully, including Greg Swingley's brother Doug, who's now running in third place, and Ed Dallas, who can only look and dream about what might have been. A rustic cabin fills this cold winter night. The mushers and their handlers share food, warmth, and precious moments of peace from the hardship of the trail. The race, however, is never far away. Brother Doug chases Robin Jacobson into the cold and lonely night, while his brother Greg chases victory. We'll be back.
All right, it's gonna be fun. All right, Piglet. Let him go. Let him go, Rick. All right.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Grand Portage Chippewa John Beargrease Sled Dog Marathon.
Greg Swinley, already departed for the Finland checkpoint, is followed into Tofte by Robin, Doug, and Jamie Nelson.
It's 7 a.m. now, and over a hearty breakfast of roast beef, potato, and carrots, I shared some trail stories rich in mushing lore.
Ted, tell us about what happened up there.
The wolf was standing in the trail and dogs ran right into him and caught him in the lines, and when he got loose, finally got loose, he ran up and down the team and finally jumped off into the woods.
Ever had anything like that happen before?
No, I've never had anything like that happen. But I saw one just before at the sawmill, and he ran almost right up to the dogs too.
Yeah.
I met Robin right. He was parked behind the wolf on the trail, and I pulled up behind him. He didn't think we could get by the wolf, and I just wanted to chase the wolf off the trail.
Have you ever experienced anything like that before?
No, I mean, I did ride to see wolves, but they're timid, you know. They stay a long ways away from them.
I don't know what's with these wolves up in this country, but
You said you went into this thing without, at least I understood you to say, without any specific agenda in mind, I suppose, other than to finish this thing.
I get a new team this year, and I just want to complete it. Had a little bad luck last year, and it's nice to come back and when you get bucked off a horse, you get back on.
Yeah.
That's just what I'm doing. So I wasn't intending to. I just running my own race.
Yeah. What's your game plan now out of here?
Well,
You don't look too nervous.
No, I'm going to wait.
You gonna take a jacuzzi here?
I think I had the fastest time in here, so I'm just going to wait until somebody else goes out.
We must be pretty equal.
Are you guys going to be watching each other to see who's making a break? No.
No, I'm just going to wait for Jamie to leave, and then I'll go.
It's now 9 a.m.
All right.
The cat and mouse game is
All right.
over.
Wait, let's go.
Now
All
Robin
right.
Jacobson must face yet another challenge, some of the most demanding terrain of the course. Every sport has the equivalent of a heartbreak hill, and it is here that Robin Jacobson must face it.
This part of the trail, bar none, is the toughest. The dog teams and drivers have to pass many spectators. We're looking at a 9-mile climb here to the top of the trail. Past drivers, Dee Johnroe and John Patton, have had problems here.
Okay, Rob.
Greg Swingley now leaves the Finland checkpoint and the rest of the pack behind.
Greg has built up an insurmountable lead, and it really is his to win or lose.
We know that Doug will stay in Tofte longer to rest his dogs. In fourth place, Jamie Nilsson's dogs are also resting. She knows that she must measure her pace with that of Doug Swingley. And unbeknownst to Doug and Jamie is Robin Jacobson's team, just 1,000 yards away, but hidden from view.
They just stopped, and then they wanted me to change leaders because they wanted me to put somebody up there that would lead. I mean, physically they're fine. I think mentally they're all done leading, and I've tried about everybody I can try in there. So now I'm just waiting. Maybe they'll want to chase.
But at the moment, there's nothing to chase out of Tofte, and Robin Jacobson is stuck motionless on the trail. But the one Robin Jacobson was chasing is now building momentum and continues down the trail. Still stronger, still confident. He goes towards Beaver Bay, and now the rest of the field races for second place. In the spell of the Yukon, Robert Service captured the essence of the sport. It's the great big broad land way up yonder. It's the forests where silence is lease. It's the beauty that fills me with wonder. It's the stillness that fills me with peace. The drama of the John Beargrease continues. In frustration, Robin Jacobson has returned back to Tofte, hoping to find a leader in his team and resume the chase. And suddenly, Jamie Nilsson now leaves Tofte, and it moves her into second place. And a bold move to chase and to leave before Doug Swingley. Jamie Nilsson, the former champion, senses this is the time to make her move. And all Robin Jacobson could do is watch and wonder what might have been. Jamie Nilsson now leaves full of fire and full of respect from her fellow mushers, who know that in this sport, men and women compete as equals. Greg Swingley into Beaver Bay, and it's time to pay homage to the spirit of John Beargrease and to change dogs.
To help navigate the difficult trail ahead, Greg's handler puts his favorite lead dog, Blue, at the head of the team.
And after that change, Greg takes time to sign off on the drum and pay tribute to John Beargrease. Curtis Gagnon out on the Caribou Trail, whose ancestral ties to John Beargrease make this more than just another race.
It wasn't that until I had been in sled dog racing for a few years that I learned that my grandfather also had sled dogs, and he used them mainly for the occupation of a mail carrier. I found it ironic to learn that I share the same interest in sled dogs as my grandfather did, and that I'll be running the same trails he did.
It's 11:15 p.m. with veteran Ray Gordon leading another group. A race within a race out of Tofte.
4 teams left the Tofte checkpoint between 4:30 and 5:30 this evening. Following Ray were Doug Swinley, Ian McKenzie, and Sven Ingholm.
The Norwegian Sven Ingholm is now past Doug Swingley and is running in 4th place. A confident man in his very first Beargrease appearance. Right behind the Norwegian is Canadian Ian McKenzie, running in 5th position and drawing strength from his surroundings.
Sawbill.
This race is an amazing spectacle, not only a tribute to the teamwork of man and dog, but also to those who share in the love of this sport. More than 1,000 men and women contributed their talents to make this race happen and to keep the dreams of this sport alive. Out on the trail, Doug Swingley has now recaptured 3rd place in a seesaw battle. And right behind him is 55-year-old Ray Gordon, a man with a wealth of experience in this sport. He's been mushing for 30 years. And this year, the veteran Gordon is now racing in his 7th John Beargrease. Our leader, Greg Swingley, into the Highway 2 checkpoint. It's now 7:39 p.m. This is the last night that Greg will have to endure on the trail, with the hardest part of the race behind him. But Duluth is still hours away. The Grand Portage Chippewa John Beargrease Sled Dog Marathon continues in a moment. Welcome back, everybody. Peter Graves and Mark Nordman with you into the primetime checkpoint. With Duluth just 10 miles away, a confident Greg Swingley senses victory. Just minutes are spent here, and it's back on the trail. Greg Swingley. No one will catch him. Out on the trail, a gutsy performance for the Norwegian Sven Engholm. He will go on to finish third. And the operative word is gutsy for Jamie Nilsson, who comes up with second place and takes the time to acknowledge her fans. This Minnesota musher is one to continue watching.
Here he comes.
A cold morning has lured the crowd into historic Lester Park. There's a sense of occasion, a sense of anticipation. Greg Swingley will now go on to make history, marking the first time that anyone has won this race twice. Greg Swingley across the finish line, displaying the discipline and confidence that has once again won him victory. But at this moment, he shares it with those that helped him get to the finish line, his dogs.
Greg is almost in shock right now here. We're so excited to see him come in with a good-looking dog team. The first thing you do is always congratulate the dogs. They're wagging their tails, they're up on their feet. He's done one heck of a job.
And Mark, some races in sport are won by half a second, but this race today was won by half a day. A very happy, jubilant winner, and Mark Nordman is with him.
Greg, first two-time champion ever in Beargrease. What do you attribute it all to?
Well, I guess a lot of it's just some luck. You know, we've been here 4 times, and there's other people that have been here a lot longer, and there are a lot of good racers here, but a lot of it has to do with luck, I think.
You sure got a nice bunch of dogs in front of you. They've sure looked healthy coming in.
Yeah, they're happy to be here. It was a long, tough trail, but they came through looking pretty good.
An outstanding performance for Greg Swingley, coming up with a victory today, followed by Minnesota's Jamie Nilsson. Norway's Sven Engholm was in third, and Doug Swingley out of Montana was in fourth. And for all of us here, it's a time we will never forget. And for the mushers who shared the trail, they all could share in a special victory.
Not only a special victory, Peter, but also a special bond. They're working with the dogs and the elements, and they just completed one of the toughest races in the history of Beargrease.
Well, the talk of the town and the trail this week has been that of the marvelous, gutsy performance of Greg Swingley from Montana, coming up with a victory in this year's John Beargrease Sled Dog Marathon. And as we talked all week, I don't think it surprised you that Greg proved so dominant. Now he must rank among the world's top mushers.
He truly is, Peter. With the tremendous athletes he has in front of him, along with his dedication to the sport, he has become one of the best.
And he's going to go places. And you know, a lot of people are talking about this race now in its 10th anniversary as being the top sled dog event in the lower 48.
Peter, it truly is. It's the Indy 500 of sled dog racing.
All right, Mark, we've had a good time. Thanks very much for working with us. For Mark Nordman, I'm Peter Graves, then, saying so long, everybody, from Duluth, Minnesota.